everyone? This is Grandmaster Jerry Fastly sponsoring us with another episode of MMA Power Talk Sport Karate at thedojine.com. Today we're going back to the days when your mustache was like well, we'll talk about that. Anyway, this gentleman, I actually seen him fight for the first time in 1981. He was a light heavyweight. He beat out one of the guys that, well, pretty much a legend. Won't mention his name right now, but okay, I will. He beat Toki Hill at the U.S. Open. Now, this gentleman went from light heavyweight down to maybe even lightweight at one point. Not only a phenomenal competitor himself, but has had probably some of the top fighters of all time and quite a few, I think 3 of the top maybe 10 women of all time competing were his students, and maybe even more. But gentlemen from South Carolina has traveled all over the world, and he's an extremely busy person. Had a fight against some bad weather today, since we do have a tropical storm coming through South Carolina. Anyhow, without further ado, my very good friend, Master Marty Knight. Are you there, sir?
Yes, sir, and thank you for having me, Jerry. This is quite an honor for myself.
Oh, it is my pleasure. It is my pleasure. We know each other for quite a while, huh, sir?
It's been a few years, to say the least.
Well, it's 2015 now, and that was 1981 when I first saw you fighting. So, yeah, it's been from the last century. So that's 100 years. Just to start. Actually, it was a millennium. That's 1,000 years.
Sometimes it feels like that, doesn't it?
Yeah, but, hey, listen. Without further ado, I want to jump to the chase. What was either your motivation, your inspiration, and your desperation when you first started in martial arts way back when? And if for some reason you don't hear me, it's because it's your microphone and I put myself on mute. Okay, sir? Let's talk about in the beginning. Shoot.
In the beginning, okay. Actually, I had every intentions of graduating college and becoming a coach. I was a double all-conference athlete in high school. And all I really wanted to do was end up being a coach. But my senior year, we had the most pitiful excuse for a coach anybody could have. So between the summer of leaving high school and going into college, that was when the Bruce Lee era was going on. That was when a movie called Billy Jack was out. And I was looking for a way to stay in shape. So I started a karate class. And as corny as it sounds, I knew this was something I was going to stay with for a while because I just absolutely loved it. And during that time, karate was not what it is today. There was not 1,000 million daycare centers teaching so-called karate classes. So I got in, I stayed in for a while, and I studied it all through college. And I was fortunate enough, I lived in Anderson, South Carolina, and the number one fighter in the world was Keith Vitale in Columbia, South Carolina, which is approximately 100 miles away. So I would go to tournaments, and I would lose, and I would sit around and watch the generation of Keith Vitale and Bobby Tucker and Mike Genova and all those guys win. And so I walked up to Mike Genova one day and with my hat in hand and said, I really would like to learn how to do this a little better. And Mike was just very generous. He said, sure, come on down. And the Sunday afternoon workouts we had in Columbia, South Carolina, were legendary because at the time we had Keith Vitale, the number one fighter in the nation, and Mike Genova and John Ork. And at the time, Joey Shiflett was a green belt. And people were always driving down, like Bobby Tucker would be coming down from Greenville, South Carolina, and Jerry Rome. So I was a second-generation Keith Vitale, Mike Genova fighter. So I got to come up and have role models in the sport, like Keith and Mike, to watch. And to this day, I know I'm being very biased, but I think Keith Vitale was the absolute best ring fighter I ever saw in my life. And it was always a pleasure to train with them, and I had the luxury of never being the best in my class. A lot of people, they can be a good fighter and go off and do tournaments, come back, and never have anybody to train with. But during that time, it was phenomenal. You would see green belts like Joey Shiflett as good as most black belts out there today. So I was very fortunate to come up under what I really do consider the greatest generation of karate fighters in sport karate out there.
Well, let me tell you something. Quite a few people, very few people will be able to argue with that. And what's interesting is that the progression from South Carolina, from meaning that you're a descendant also of Mr. John Roper himself, who was Vitale's instructor, the only reason I know, because I'm probably one of the biggest fans. of the entire sport of martial arts, it didn't matter where it came from. And what's also interesting is, rest in peace, when Vitali had a chance to go travel towards Georgia with our good friend, Master Joe Corley, he also was able to develop some other fighters, including guys like Vernon Johnson, rest in peace. So whether it was John Hawk or Vernon Johnson and the people that you just mentioned, like a young Joey Schiffler, who now obviously hasn't skipped too much of a beat, which is pretty interesting. I don't know if it's the oxygen or the water down in the South, but your guys last a lot longer than these guys up here in the North.
Well, I think we were the first generation coming out that were fitness oriented in the 80s, in the mid 80s. In 1985, I think when I first got rated top 20 in the nation. And at that time, the promoters, the players had a lot of authority back then, because to have a national rated tournament, you had to get 10 of the top 10 fighters to your event before it could be nationally rated. And here in South Carolina, there was me, there was Tony Young, there was Joey Shiflett, and there was Karen Cook. And so we always got a good deal, like free airfare and free hotel rooms. And back then, the players had a lot of control over what they did. And then the Karate Illustrated magazine just did away with that rule, so the players had to fend for themselves after that. But during that time in the 80s, Joey and Tony and I were always cross-training, because it wasn't even very popular then. We were always running. I was having to run to keep my weight down. But we were running and training and doing the other stuff back then. Karate used to be, you learn to punch and kick, and you went to tournaments and you fought. But I think our generation, the early 80s, were the first ones to take the sport and really turn it into where you had to be an athlete as well as a skilled martial artist to win or place in the top fighters in the nation. So I take kind of pride in that. We were the first ones to really started cross-training and everything, which is just common sense to everybody today. But it had to start somewhere, and it kind of started with us back then. In the South, you mentioned Vernon Johnson and John Orr. You had heavyweights that were not fat people who had a black belt. You had heavyweights who were athletes, like John Orr played college football. Vernon Johnson was a seasoned athlete who moved like a lightweight. So when you said heavyweight, you just meant a more muscular, talented fighter, where in a lot of areas, heavyweights meant just fat guys who couldn't make the weight. But down south, that generation we came up in, we were all pretty much athletes who cross-trained back then. So I kind of take a lot of pride in being part of that generation.
And, the funny thing is that there's a few other people's names that we haven't mentioned, and we might as well drop in rest in peace to someone like Richard Jackson. And I think you guys also had Diggly Dog out there, Mike Goldman, right? And a bunch of other people, huh?
Yeah. Mike Goldman, if it was ever an ambassador of karate, Mike Goldman was probably one. At the time, he was one of the top super lightweights in the nation. He hosted his own disco dance show in Columbia. And Mike was always a popular guy, always had a smile on his face. And they called him Hot Dog, which was deservedly so, because he would always put a show on when he fought. And I fought Mike, I think, 2 or 3 times, and he always was so gracious, and he was always had a smile on his face, and was one of the great fighters you could fight, because, win, lose, or draw, you were always bumping gloves, and it was the right attitude. Richard Jackson, back then, carried point karate to the step further. Back then, people were coming into what is called PK kickboxing, and Bill Wallace and those guys. Well, Richard Jackson was one of the first in the South to mention. He was a super lightweight fighter who ended up being, I know he was a United States super lightweight champion, and I don't know if he held the world title or not, but he was one that first came along through the spinning back fist. And believe it or not, Mike Goldman, Richard Jackson, all these guys out of the Keith Vitale stable. So that speaks tons in itself right there.
Again, just history after history, but there's also some herstory. And that herstory, and you mentioned it, you had the ability not only to stay humble and give credit to other people, but let's get really specific now. Karen Cook, as a teenager, fighting against probably the most dangerous, if not top 3 most dangerous sport karate players of all time, men or women, meaning Linda Denley, was fighting against Linda Denley at the U.S. Open 1981 for the Grand Championship. Now, she must have been 15, 16, 17 years old, because she kept referring to her as Miss Denley. I remember that. And that was the first event that I actually went to when you beat Toki Hill. And you look slightly different, and you wasn't light heavyweight. But another person, or 2 other people that came from that camp also, and some of you may not realize it, Now, they both ended up having the last name Lee, but Brenda Lee today, or back to, I guess, Brenda Hunt again, and also Nicole, I should say, Nikki Carlson, now known as Lee, with your other student, Rick Lee, also became 3 of probably the top 10 women fighters of all time, even though the question would be whatever happened to Karen Cook. But how the heck did you get to do that? Let's talk about the consistency of having these women being phenomenal.
Okay, it's really not rocket science. I think I was the first one to actually, okay, first off, men and women are never going to be unequal. You know, they're just never going to be equal. Women are going to be better at some things. Men are going to be better at some things. That's not saying that a woman can't be a great athlete or a man can't be a great interior decorator, for lack of a better terminology. But nobody ever took the time to teach a girl how to beat another girl fighter. It's great to teach women self-defense against men, but men and women fight differently. I mean, they may look like they fight the same, but they're going to have a different strategy. They have different skill level and everything. And Karen Cook was the first girl champion I ever trained. And at the time, Keith Vitale had a girl named Stacy Dukes. And Stacy Dukes was one of these guys, actually one of these girls got there and just bounced around and everything. And Karen wanted to be like her. So what we did, we tried to formulate Karen's movement like Stacy. Karen had a lot of reach. She had more reach than Stacy. And we'd go down and train with Keith Vitale on the weekends. And at the time, Keith had moved down to Georgia training with Joe Corley. And Karen would get a chance to spar. Well, at the time, there was one ratings. There was Karate Illustrated magazine ratings. That was it. There were no 100 different ratings out there. There was no, 47 world champions every year. There was clear ratings. There was a men's champion. There was a women. That was the way it was. And Karen got to fight Stacey Dukes in a tournament one time. At Keith Vitale's tournament, Karen ended up beating her, which gave Karen a lot of confidence then. And then so we started traveling around, and Karen was only 16 fighting national women's. And the first year she fought, 1985, she won the number 1 lightweight in the nation. She never could really get past Arlene Lemus, because Arlene had a lot of reach, and Arlene also had the name, and she never could get past Linda Denley, who Linda Denley was a rough and tumble fighter, and Karen was like in her rookie year. And as far as calling Linda Denley Miss Denley, to this day, I will still call Linda Miss Denley because I have that much respect for her. But Karen, she was a smart fighter. She fought to beat other girls, not to beat other guys. She tried to beat them at their own game. And I think she could have went on to be one of the best I ever had. She chose a different career. She met her husband.